send everybody over here, guys. Our free Assange vigil is triple streaming with no audio. So I thought I would take it upon myself. We'll back this up just a little bit and launch on my channel because obviously it's really important we talk about what happened today.
Absolutely.
Especially with the media kind of obfuscating and not even really reporting on the fact that Assange is behind a glass wall.
Yeah, inside a bulletproof glass box.
It's like the Pope Mobile without the Pope and all the prison.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like it's
Yes.
you know, without any of the fun of being the Pope, and you're not being able to defend yourself against an unjust kangaroo court that's trying to extradite you so you can spend the rest of your life in pound me in the ass prison.
Yeah.
So the media tried to say that the protesters were actually obfuscating Assange being able to understand what was happening at the trial. Why don't you read what actually happened, Dak? And by the way, let's introduce everybody. I'm sorry, I'm rude. Jason, Steve, Christy, Dak, Andrew. They are action for Assange. And by the way, Dak Rouleau has some really great confrontations if you haven't seen them. Slow News Day, great channel, great insights from Christy and Andrew. Sorry I interrupted.
You can't interrupt someone who hasn't spoken yet.
So this is coming from Craig Murray from inside of the actual courthouse itself today.
Craig Murray seems to be writing a daily series about everything that's happening in the courtroom, and he did a fantastic job today despite all of the inconveniences the court placed in front of him in order to try to discourage journalists from coming out to report. Great job, Mr. Murray. You have all the respect in the world. And so here's the quote. Julian Assange is confined at the back of the court behind a bulletproof glass screen. He made the point several times during proceedings that this makes it very difficult for him to see and hear the proceedings. The magistrate, Vanessa Baritzer, chose to interpret this with studied dishonesty as a problem caused by the very faint noise of demonstrators outside, as opposed to a problem caused by Assange being locked away from the court in a massive bulletproof glass box.
So, wait, before we get into this, hey Josh, let me just suggest this. Maybe you just dump this feed and you restream my stream. You just go over to my YouTube channel because we know we have audio over there. Is that a good idea or not?
Yeah, we could do that.
Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Can you hear me on that, Josh?
I've got the recording for audio, so.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess.
Either way.
All right.
Yeah, whatever
All
makes
right.
it work.
So I apologize.
No, you're good.
Multiple journalists tweeted this out today from the court that Julian was asking for the court to tell the protesters to be quiet, essentially, or to be quieter, and that was what was preventing him from being able to concentrate. So Craig Murray has a completely different story of how this went down.
And it seems much more accurate than...
Correct,
Right.
yeah. And as Craig Murray goes on to describe that Julian Assange doesn't necessarily need to be in this box. This is for a violent offender.
It's for a show of force. That's why they have him in there. It's so that way they can still say, even in the trial, to see if you will be free, we are going to imprison you in the courtroom.
And, you know, my audience might be familiar, but it reminded me of the story I did earlier in the year where they took the former president of Egypt in one of these closed courtrooms, and he actually died in the box. He died in the box. He dropped dead in court, and I don't know how far we're away from that. You know, people don't realize the world is very big, and just because it's not happening in the United States or in Europe, where there is still some semblance of freedom of speech and a freedom of press, they don't understand that in places like Egypt, they have closed doors, and they have dictators that decide, and yeah, you're on trial in a magic box, but you might not make it out. And nobody questions it. And by the way, months later, that man's son was killed. So if we allow this guy to be extradited, our system is just another step closer to that system.
Right.
And we can't allow that.
I mean, we see it even in Chelsea Manning's case. She's been in jail for the third time for the same charges, attempting to make her perjure herself because they already have everything they need in this prosecution.
Which she's made perfectly clear. There's no way you can mince words from her statement about a grand jury, from the statements that her lawyers have continuously made.
You guys sound
No,
bad.
you're not going to break Chelsea. You're not. Like, there's no two ways about that. She's all, fuck your court system, fuck your grand jury, fuck your fines, fuck your time. I've already spent 77% of my adult life incarcerated. I can do the next 3 months on my fucking head. Alright? Like, there's no
Yeah, you
back
can't
down
you can't
there.
break someone that for almost half of their life at this point has been in solitary confinement or in prison for multiple hours a day without human contact. Anything they try to throw at that is just, it's moot at this point.
Someone knocking?
I think it's not downstairs.
Oh, is there a downstairs?
Yeah.
Oh, they're mad at us probably.
I don't think he's mad at us.
No, we were way louder yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were like going at it.
Oh.
And he broke
I mean, this
his
is
door
it.
last night. He broke the key off in his door.
Oh.
Dude, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry,
I
guys.
shouted down. I'm like, I build and fix stuff for a living.
While we're talking Chelsea Manning, we should probably talk about Chelsea Manning and that opening document that they're going to defend. I mean, they're saying in this document, of the witnesses they're going to call a forensic expert that's basically going to put it to rest that obviously Julian Assange did not help Chelsea Manning hack anything.
Right.
You can call him an hacktivist all you want, but that's why the 2020 National Counterintelligence document doesn't just do hacktivist, it does leaktivist and public disclosure organization. That makes it so. Listen, Chelsea Manning wouldn't have had to hack anything. Could have just gotten documents, given them to me, you, or anybody that's part of an organization or has an ideological motive, which is also in that same sentence, and we release it to the public. Because maybe the public should know that children are being raped in front of their parents at Abu Ghraib prison. Maybe they should know that. Maybe they should know when journalists are being targeted by our drones. It's weird.
And then they circle back and kill the first responders, drag the children on a 9-hour car ride, only to turn around and drag them on another car ride to dump them at an Iraqi hospital against U.S. laws of engagement.
But there is something interesting here in Craig Murray's article that suggests that perhaps Assange is guilty if Manning was guilty. Here's a quote here. The 1989 Official Secrets Act had been introduced by the Thatcher government after the Ponting case, specifically to remove the public interest defense and to make unauthorized possession of an official secret a crime of strict liability. Meaning, no matter how you got it, publishing and even possessing made you guilty. Therefore, under the principle of dual criminality, Assange was liable for extradition whether or not he had aided and abetting Manning. The Lewis, that's the lawyer for the United States, then went on to add that any journalist and any publication that printed the official secret would therefore also be committing an offense, no matter how they obtained it, and no matter if it did or did not name informants.
But wouldn't that be United Kingdom law and not extradition for the United States?
But even so, they're saying therefore, it makes Assange eligible for extradition.
I see.
Which from a
Because it
legal
takes
angle
the-
makes the first charge make sense for the U.S. to try to pull them over here then.
So but the whole narrative that they need to establish is that Julian Assange is a cyber criminal, he's a cyber terrorist, as Joe Biden called him, a number of other presidential candidates, and to keep the political aspect and the political persecution out of it as much as possible. Because once they do, the treaty breaks down, the U.S.-UK extradition.
Well,
treaty.
the Queen's comments alone nullify the entire case because
But-
she literally said, "I can't weigh in a political case."
Right, so a Julian Assange
But she
supporter
could.
wrote to the Queen asking her to intervene in this matter, and her response from an official letterhead was, yeah, exactly what you said, she cannot intervene in a political case.
But she
and she could.
She could.
But she could.
But she
I just
can't.
want to let everybody know.
It hurts the,
100% she
it hurts
could.
the national interest for her to intervene. But in her saying she can't because it's a political case, nullifies the extradition agreement that says it can't happen in the matter of politics.
That's what
What-
this is all about.
On top of that, though, I want to just point out that is the ultimate nepotism, aka rule by bloodline, that a woman that was never elected to anything literally has this man's hands in her life and has for many other people, and she's not going to pull the string and say, you get to stay. No.
What Murray is concluding there is that therefore other journalists, such as the New York Times and the Guardian, would also be.
Oh, so we should
And-
go through
But what this happened was the prosecution, the lawyer for the United States, was flustered at this point. Murray explains that he was not expecting to admit that. He didn't intend to admit that in front of open court, that yes, other journalists would be subject to prosecution.
Especially because they never extradited the guy that hacked into the UFO files. You remember that? The
Oh, right,
original?
right.
I mean, there was a big deal, and they decided not to extradite him.
No, they
And
decided to push disclosure.
Yeah, well,
Eventually.
exactly.
And that's
yeah.
what the DNC email showed us. Like,
Yeah.
literal astronauts emailing John Podesta being like, hey, when are we doing disclosure?
Tom DeLonge, hey, let's make a History Channel show that's totally made up. I hate that show. It's the worst.
Yeah.
I should. While we're talking UK politics, I think it's also important to give Jeremy Corbyn credit for standing up in Parliament and putting Boris Johnson
Yes.
on the spot to say, what are you going to do? And Boris Johnson essentially saying, well, he's going to uphold the freedom of the press and free speech, but would not make the comment on Assange. And if you read this documentation, his lawyers truly believe that after this Rohrabacher intervention, we'll call it a meeting, an offer, whatever. After this, when Assange did not cut a deal, it was actually Trump's DOJ that wrote this indictment up. That this was not in the works under the Obama administration. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but that's what the lawyers are putting in their opening statement. That this was a vengeance, and the new intel officer, or intel chief, has actually been on this case for many, many months, making the case for Assange before getting this position, and basically waiting to be prompted into the public eye at this very moment, while we may extradite him here and charge him.
And it's gross. It's gross to see it all play out like that because it literally comes down to it's just the ultimate unprinciple. Because that offer is literally saying, hey, Julian, violate your principles, turn your back on what you believe in to get this thing, and then the whole charade can start to come down. Or
Yeah, we can make all your problems go away, kid.
Mhm.
All you gotta do is say these couple of
Right.
words.
Which is
Just-
the
just
same
the words.
fucking
Just say
thing
the
they're doing
words.
to Chelsea. It's I read it today when we were doing the protests out in DC because I don't even know if they heard us talk about that earlier.
No.
The introduction to cypherpunk specifically talks about this situation, and it is that the cryptographic community, no amount of force can solve the math problem of the communications that they've had, if there was any extra than what they've already seen. The files that they've had, all these other things that are added in there that as the public, people don't know. Like the WikiLeaks insurance files
Yeah.
and shit like that, where you have to be some kind of decryptor to even try to attempt to get in there, or you have to have the key, which is the answer to the math problem. So Julian and Chelsea's situation comes down to no amount of force can solve the math problem. And that's what we're seeing. Because in cypherpunks, they mention throughout the entire thing, like the use of torture and all of this to try to solve this math problem.
And what it's come to is the complete erosion of all semblance of rule of law.
Yeah.
Like none whatsoever. There's a treaty that bans extradition for political purposes. We know it's a political ordeal. We know that he's a political prisoner. And yet here we are pushing forward. They are pushing forward with this. There's no rule of law. None. It's so farcical that we've got Weinstein getting 1 to 3 years. Maybe in a fucking club fed.
Probably.
More than likely.
Or see, because the punishment for Weinstein there is literally just being walked out in cuffs. Like the public shame of being found in cuffs, walked out of a courtroom.
And
for
weigh that to
all these
almost a
charges.
decade in arbitrary detention and torture and solitary confinement.
And meanwhile, while we started the protest from the White House, maybe one street up, there was an elderly gentleman, probably in his 70s, that looked at us and said, "He's a rapist." So
So,
instead,
did you ever hear? Well, I want to word this in a way that I
Yeah.
don't. That is right. We have a president that says, "Grab him by the pussy,"
Sure.
right? And you have, on the other spectrum, a broken condom with no one's DNA on it, and somehow that guy is the one with the sexual assault.
and again, this sexual assault problem never charged, and now all of it has been dropped.
Right.
It's basically been admitted to being a farce. There was never
It,
a
it-
charge.
it makes a headline because people will see that headline pop up
And be
about
that old
Julian
man.
and Sweden.
But what doesn't is the fucking email from the Crown Prosecutorial Service to the Swedish fucking government, to the Swedish police, saying, hold him.
Don't get cold feet.
Don't get cold feet. Go through with this.
So you guys,
Make sure it happens. There's another series of tweets where the CIA is talking to, I believe it's the British at this point, saying, we'll throw enough charges at him to keep him occupied for the rest of his life.
So the U.S. prosecutors, in their opening statements today, really diminished what this would do to journalism. They diminished the need for the defense to even provide any evidence, and they really diminished the sentencing that Julian would get if he was brought to the United States, and said that simply this is just about whether or not the extradition should move forward, and that no witnesses or evidence should even be brought in this hearing that has started today. So really, they're trying to diminish the charges, diminish the potential for 175 years, and really just say, no, just come on over, prove, you're just gonna have a little trial, maybe serve like 50 months.
Into the prisons that you revealed the fucking torture
Right,
in
so this is...
while there was a president in office who ran on ending those programs.
But that gets us to the real root of the problem, which is that there is no journalism in this country. There's just a kind of corporate anti-journalism that serves the
Well, this
interests of the state.
is the journalism of this
Yeah,
country.
yes, but we're
You don't
talking
like
about-
us doing this.
But I'm obviously referring to like the powerful journalism, the
Yeah.
corporate journalism.
Right.
And Murray refers to that in his article when he says that, and here's a little interesting quote from him, there is no printed or electronic record of the prosecution's reply to a previous argument. His original statement was provided in cut and paste format to the media. His contradiction of it would require a journalist to listen to what was said in court, understand it, and write it down. There is no significant percentage of mainstream media journalists who command that elementary ability nowadays. Journalism consists of cut and paste of approved sources only. Lewis could have stabbed Assange to death in the courtroom and it would not be reported unless contained in a government press release. Unfortunately, that's not a facetious statement. It does mean that only what is presented to the public by an approved official authorized source will be disseminated for widespread consumption.
And you know what?
State television.
Let's talk about that because I think it's really important. And there's a glaring example of that and how it goes even beyond our government and now into social media. You look at less than a month ago, probably 3 weeks ago, Zero Hedge tweets out an article saying the coronavirus could possibly be a bioweapon and from a lab.
Yeah.
Immediately terminated from Twitter. I'm not sure what the suspension was, 2 weeks or whatever, but they get suspended. Here we are yesterday. That is the headline at the New York Post.
No.
The New York Post is not going to be suspended.
No,
They're not going to be kicked off. They're the authoritative source.
Right.
The Afghanistan papers that the Washington Post went through, 3 years of FOIA lawsuits, $300,000 that we don't have. If we want to go through the FOIA process, do you have 3 years and 300 grand that you can?
I do not.
Yeah. Do you? Anybody? 300 grand like? No.
Not on me.
And all the Afghanistan papers did was validate every single thing that WikiLeaks had published about the Afghanistan war. It validated all of the leaks that Chelsea Manning provided, 100% corroborated it, and zero people in state media made that connection.
What state media? What about fucking Tomorrow's News Today? Were they talking
yeah.
about the Afghanistan papers? By the way, get ready, Owen Schroyer. I'm coming for you tomorrow, buddy. We're gonna have a talk. We're gonna talk OPCW. We're gonna talk about the complete blackout of Assange and the extradition over at the mainstream alternative. I don't even know. You know what I need? I need a pie in front of me with chili, and I need to smell like Julian Assange. I'm gonna take it to Roger Stone. We're going to take out Bill Barr in the deep state. Bob Barr in the deep state. Bill Barr. I always confuse that.
Billy Bob Barr.
Yeah. Billy Bob Barr. And then, you know what? We went to the DOJ today, guys.
Oh, it's
Yeah, let's talk about what we did today.
Yeah. And when we went to the DOJ, they have this huge quote about justice and social security and happiness and
furthering our human race.
race, but yes, human
Yeah,
race. They're
yeah.
not. And what I found ironic was the dozen or so people that were outside to protect the Bill Barrs of the world and those deep staters were all people of color.
Mhm.
I don't think there was a white guy amongst them. So when I stepped up to the plate and I said, "Hey, man, those missiles we sent in after that fake Duma attack killed plenty of brown people," and I'll tell you what. I saw people look at me and they're like, "You know what? They fucking did." They did.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to step up to the plate for every single innocent human being out there, and go after the predator class. No matter who they are or what political party they support or whatever the media is saying, you're not worth your salt. You have no integrity. Stick to your Fleming Steakhouse bullshit. Like, I can't stand it. And this is it, man. We've already had so much taken from us. They're still talking about the AUMF when they use military force. That was passed right after 9/11 for Al-Qaeda that we're working with openly in Syria. I watched the video.
We have a super unique opportunity right now to end the Patriot Act.
We do.
'Cause this is
it
one of the-
expires in a few days.
Yeah. And so I don't really know how we can do it because no one kind of heeded the calls that I put out to try to do it from the larger independent media sphere. But that's something that's coming to an end. Could be coming to an end. And it's not covered anywhere, it's not pushed anywhere. And that dates back to the AUMF and the things that they're using to actually strip our rights away. Because one of the big things we talked about today at the event at the White House specifically with all the different reporters and things like that is the access to information, whether you're fighting for immigrant rights, whether you're fighting for First or Second Amendment rights, whether you're fighting for literally the rights of people to live their lives without having violence committed against them. Having a foundational core center of free speech is literally the thing that holds all of that together. Because we can't take another step up if we don't actually know what's happening in the world.
Yeah, one of the questions we got a lot was, why are we doing this?
Right.
Why Julian Assange? Why this issue? Why is free speech important to us? And I think all of us were giving that exact answer.
And 10 years ago, every person in the country at least knew the bullshit that was going on, but was like, yeah, but those informations were important. We had a president in 2008 literally running on ending Guantanamo Bay, got the gift to his administration of the reasons why.
Gave him the Nobel Peace Prize
and then,
before he did
and
anything.
then put the woman in jail.
For ending the war in
fucking reveal
Iraq,
it.
too. No less.
Dude, I'm so glad that you brought up 2008 because it's got to be 2 weeks ago now. But I went and I got one of those debates from 2008, the first ever YouTube CNN collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
Anderson Cooper. It started anti-war. Everybody asking a question was asking when we got out of Iraq. Everybody up there had a plan to get us out
But
of
dude,
Iraq.
so why is it that the Democratic Party only does debates and town halls on CNN right now?
Why do you think?
So that way they can completely control the narrative and keep any question like that out.
And you know what? As little time as they gave to Mike Gravel and Dennis Kucinich, they still got time and they were still on that stage.
Yeah.
They
And
did
they
everything
took
in their
people-
power
They
to
took
get Tulsi
people
off.
out with thoughts and ideas. They had people removed from the public consciousness based on the decisions those people made that impacted other people's lives. And it's degraded to the point that it's just a public open shit show, and it's crazy.
The corporate media has become an anaconda where now any person with any kind of integrity has to be suffocated. Like, they used to at least allow those people to stand on stage to act as punching bags, to be sort of a contrast to the more dignified, respected people like Obama. They gave Ron Paul a little bit of time to go up and talk about the
They smeared him, but you're right. He got to talk.
You know,
Right. But with
not in 2012, though.
no, he did in 2012. He was,
Oh, that's right, he did. Yeah.
Well, 2012 is when they
Yeah,
began
Nigeria
to
was a
co-opt,
whole
in my
thing, too, for the
opinion,
big stages.
the, what was it?
The Tea Party movement?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
And I had that discussion. I'm going to let you finish that.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that with Ron Paul, it seemed like when Tulsi Gabbard announced her campaign, I knew that she was going to face a lot of the same obstacles and challenges that Ron Paul faced as a legitimate anti-war voice. But I never imagined that they were going to force her off the stage, because Ron Paul had no issue about getting time on the stage. The only question was he had no issue getting on the stage. The question was how much time was he going to get once he was there.
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard being excluded from the stage through obviously a designed process was really, really frightening. And the way that people, average Americans, did not care about this anti-democratic
Well, they
process.
painted her as a Russian asset.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, well, listen,
Right.
how
She
absurd.
sued over it.
Let's talk about that Hillary Clinton 2-hour PR piece, right?
Mhm.
And remember, Bloomberg has said it might be a hill dog ticket.
Oh,
That may be how we bring her in. She smeared Tulsi. She smeared Bernie. She brought in, I mean, I'm probably the youngest generation that still might listen to Stern. You're talking about 40 to 60-year-olds, like that gentleman that's like, rapist.
Yeah.
So that same kind of guy is going, Russia, because they believe that narrative. And talking about the narrative set with Ron Paul especially, and the co-opting of the Tea Party movement, right?
Mhm.
In my interview with Wired Magazine. He brought up the Tea Party movement. And I go, dude, we were the original Tea Party movement.
Absolutely.
In 2006 and 2007, we had people with the 9/11 Commission with holes dressed up like Revolutionary War heroes,
Yep.
throwing it into the San Francisco Bay. And I showed him that, and he goes, well, why don't anybody ever talk about this? I'm like, because we were behind Rand Paul in 2008. He had gained enough momentum in 2012.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, sorry. I'm an asshole. Ron Paul. Ron Paul in 2008, he'd gained enough in 2012 that if things were fair, he probably could have won. He won some primaries.
Oh, sure.
But instead, you co-opt this movement, you paint it to be racist, you paint it all to be right-wing, when, as a Tea Party guy, I'm as fucking not right-wing as you can imagine. I believe in freedom and personal responsibility and not going to war with everybody, you know, and I'm on board with a guys like that because we don't have that anymore. It's just like, listen, I might not be down with the universal basic income that Tulsi said she'd be down with. I may not be down with her climate policies. I may not even be down with what she said on torture. But she's the only one up there saying we need to get out of Syria. We need to get out of Afghanistan.
She's the
we
only
need to
one.
get out of Iraq.
She was the only one willing to recognize that the OPCW releases came out. Like, I'm no fan of Tulsi, and I've been very vocal about my distrust based on her history, but that's still, no one else put themselves up to say that was a fucking false flag, and we were lied to at the behest of our own government by the international organization that we manipulated.
So before we get too far off this topic, I do want to bring up the Russian asset thing because Taylor Hudak is in London covering this in Belmarsh, and we have had the interesting experience of, I think we finally made it, boys, because Taylor Hudak is being smeared as a Russian asset today on Twitter.
The right hand of Poot Poot.
With not only xenophobic language, but sexist language.
Yes.
Well, let's get into this guy really quick, right? I've never
Well,
seen.
let's start with Louise Minch because it's her. She's the impetus for this because Caruso just picked it up and ran with it.
Okay.
Right. So Taylor has been working nonstop around the clock in London, and obviously she's making an impact as an independent journalist covering this. There on the ground with the protesters. You all know that we fundraised to get her there and to get us to DC.
On a bare bones budget, by the way.
Very bare bones budget. You know, we
Under $5,000 to get anybody, one person, to Europe and back is unbelievable on a trip like this.
Right.
You funded your entire thing with that money.
Exactly,
Correct? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we were here a whole week. She's there a week plus, so she had some time to get used to the time zone change. And so now yes, we've gotten these attacks. Louise Mensch went through Taylor's timeline today on Twitter and tried to point out different times when she believed she was being a Russian asset because she's pro-Assange. Taylor's looks were called out for being blonde-haired, blue-eyed.
Because that's the one.
You're not allowed to be
That's-
attractive
that's the
unless you don't have a brain in your head. If you don't have a fucking brain in your head, you can be as attractive as you want, be on a fucking Hollywood billboard, the best thing in the world. You got a brain? Russian asset.
Because
That goes back to what you were saying earlier about the people of color at the outside of the Department of Justice building who did not recognize how racist our imperialist foreign policy is. There's also a disturbingly misogynistic element to the Pentagon's agenda, which is lost on a lot of the what I like to call the corporate feminists or the bourgeois feminists who have been sucked up by the Democratic Party.
So both Taylor
The
and
author
I
of
as
Feminist Baby.
Both Taylor and I as spokespeople, women for Unity for J and One versus 5I have both been smeared on Twitter for different things, for how we look, for different things in our personal life, and now we've morphed into Russian assets. And I mean, if she's a Russian asset, then Andrew and Steve and I
And
are
this-
also Russian
and it's-
assets.
and it's not just
this
for
whole
her.
damn thing is a Russian-funded.
Don't
No,
spit on
it's
you,
not.
bitch.
We do this with
Show them the mug.
Oh my
that's
God.
So I mean, we are obviously making an impact
Yeah.
here and in London. We are obviously doing a good job covering this. We are getting the voice out.
And she's doing amazing over there, working
Yes.
with Tariq and Watchdog, because to catch people up that weren't aware, Steve was supposed to be in London with Taylor too, but things, passports are ridiculous. He wasn't able to go. So that's why he's here in DC with us.
I'll be perfectly honest about that shit too. My passport application got flagged. I had a felony that was expunged 5 years ago. The reason I had the felony is because I was at a concert in Athens, Georgia, and it was pouring down the rain. And we were standing underneath an awning, about 6 of us. We all have backpacks and long hair. So 3 cops on bikes pinned us in to the wall behind this awning. And by the time they were done running my pockets, there were 6 hits of ecstasy in there that were not there before the cops showed up.
Jesus.
In full disclosure, they missed a quarter of mushrooms that I had. So I'm in the back of the
Just trying to get it right out of there, yeah.
Right.
Not that extra felony charge, get it out.
Shove them shits in the middle of the back seat. Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's straight up. But
Did you go back to the cruiser to retrieve them?
no. I what I did is I spent 3 months in the Clark County Detention Center waiting to go to court. They had all of us there for 3 months. When we went to court, they were like, everybody has a Class D felony and you're banned from the state of Georgia for 50 years. And we all gave out-of-state addresses. There's no probation for out-of-state, just don't come back. I got it expunged when I went to apply for my passport. 4 months went by and I was like, holy fuck, dude, we're getting close to time. I'm getting kind of nervous. So I finally got in contact with the State Department and they're like, oh no, we flagged your passport because you have a warrant out of the state of Georgia. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you can appeal it.
Yeah.
We'll set a hearing for you.
And you're like, I don't think I want to go back to Georgia.
The 3rd week of April is when we can get you in.
It's funny how America insists on keeping their criminals here. They don't-
1,000%.
Well, that's because we already populated Australia, and then they had a revolution. They just have to institute press freedom.
That, by the way, is where the rattlesnake on the "Don't Tread on Me" flag came from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Britain insisting on sending their criminals here. Ben Franklin suggested we should thank Britain by sending them our rattlesnakes. Now, in the chat, we have a couple of questions. 3 actually. One person was asking. Tony watches closely. Was asking if we'll be posting Taylor in London on one of our channels.
Yes,
So-
after this stream, we are planning on restreaming most of her content, I believe, from today. So
Yes,
we
from
were
today and over the weekend.
Yeah, we were trying to stream with her this morning. We've been having a lot of technical issues. Obviously, if you're watching on Jason's channel, you know that the Action for Assange channel is having some sound issues.
No, we're good now.
Oh, we're good now? Okay.
Oh, they took care of it like a couple minutes in,
cool.
yeah.
So we were earlier. We've been going through a lot of on-the-spot technical issues. Hopefully, we're going to get a chance to stream with Taylor. But yes, we will be showing her footage from the last few days on our channel as well.
And I want to shout out to Erica Jill, who was down in New York City at the actions today.
Yes, I
and
saw her post.
guys, you guys can get involved. And by the way, Drufus was down here. He said
Yeah,
I was
he
a little.
was.
He said I was a little intense in person in the chat. You should have come to the lunch. I was a little more lighthearted talking.
Yeah.
I know I'm a little intense when we get in front of DC and in front of a bunch of people that.
I mean, that's maybe
Yeah.
people
When you
listen-
come up on Wednesday, Drew, after we leave Chelsea and Jeremy's detention center.
And the white balance, Drew, I'm sorry, this is the front face of my camera. I didn't really set anything up. I wasn't even going to broadcast
A lot
it.
of
But...
people
Yeah.
think we've been smoking cigarettes.
Oh, is that what it is? No, it's not that. We got to get
No.
a light over here and it's a front-facing camera, guys.
Otherwise, it would be too
I
difficult.
wasn't planning on broadcasting, but when 3 broadcasts didn't have sound, I thought I'd jump in.
Another question we have here comes from Rob Juno, who was asking what was the most sympathetic / antipathetic moments of the day. I thought the most sympathetic by far was in front of the White House. There was an 80-year-old man who was a veteran of the National Security State, who said that he came out with a great sign showing his support for Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange et al., and also with an anti-war message. A disabled person was really glad to sit and hear him speak today. I think do you have that on your channel, his speech?
Which one was that?
That was the man in the wheelchair in front of the White House who
White
made
beard.
the speech.
I'm not sure. I remember.
Yeah, there's definitely footage of that man when we find out.
And
when we find out now.
Rupley should have it too, I believe.
Well,
Rupley
Ford
is fine.
Fisher will have it.
Spending.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ford Fisher was there too.
Got
You know what?
Ford.
News to share. Listen, he stays completely neutral, and you need that. You need somebody who's just going to be the camera on the ground.
Right.
Because think of it this way, guys. That's what they don't have in China. Forget about what spin you're hearing from this source, that source, everybody trying to decode it. What you don't have is journalists just on the ground observing.
Right.
And that's dangerous. And that's the kind of, slave state we're headed towards here. They beta test so many things in China. I can't imagine a country where essentially all of us are locked down.
Well, the UK rolled out social credit scores. They have come out and publicly said that the use of artificial intelligence through the government apparatuses of the UK has been almost completely undisclosed to the citizens. While they're rolling out facial recognition programs, while they're putting in all of these other dystopian elements with the most CCTVs per capita.
And forever they've had.
Yeah.
For 10 years they've had.
Yeah.
this.
There's a real quick thought. When we go back to the DOJ on Friday, we need to read the text that brought pre-crime into existence.
That would be excellent to do.
Right at Bill Barr.
I would actually like to read the other speeches, we were talking about this earlier, the other speeches throughout history that are direct violations of the Espionage Act. Because the officers rolling around with us aren't even going to realize that we're violating some law that was written in 1917 to take down a socialist organizer.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it was. That's why we have the Espionage Act, is because there was a guy that was speaking out against World War I. That's why the 1917 Espionage Act was created. One of the first people prosecuted was Eugene Debs for the crime of trying to persuade people not to join the military in World War I because it was a bankers' war.
Imagine a banker's war.
Who would have
I
guessed?
can't imagine. Jeez. You know, those bankers, I bet they want to be on the front lines pretty bad.
They do. That's why they fund it so well. You know?
That's why.
Yeah.
They just
They
want
wish they could just get right in there, get the bad guy.
So does anyone want to take a stab at how many protesters we had?
30.
Yeah, at the beginning of the day, there were probably closer to 50, but then that fizzled out and Code Pink left.
Yeah.
We need more.
God
Yeah,
bless
We
them.
need
take
more.
We'll take more.
We'll take more anytime. We need thousands to be quite honest, guys.
Yeah.
And not
Every major city.
thousands, we need tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And we better start kicking and screaming, or we'll be kicking and screaming in our high rises when we get locked up in pandemic level whatever, like they are in Wuhan.
Or we'll be kicking and screaming from a fucking soundproof box inside our own courtroom.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what we're going to do tomorrow and why we're going to these specific
And
locations.
then we should get on with the candlelight.
Yeah, that sounds cool, yeah.
Absolutely. So tomorrow we're going to be meeting outside of the Hill at noon, and that's because Christy and Steve are going to do an interview on fault lines, and it is in the same building. We're going to be at ABC, CBS, Washington Post, and Washington Examiner. CBS is kind of out of the way in their video, so we may not be there. But we're meeting up at the Hill in DC at noon. And we're going to be doing, we don't really have a good word for it, but like newsies or like the extra, read all about it. And we wrote articles from the future of journalists from those institutions who referenced and cited WikiLeaks in previous articles that would also be found guilty of the Espionage Act should Julian be brought here for prosecution.
Yeah, so we're bringing the dystopian future to the media tomorrow to let them
Yes.
know that they are next, essentially, or
Well,
they could be next.
if nothing else, are not every member of the mainstream media part of a public disclosure organization? Isn't that what the fuck they're supposed to be doing?
Well, they don't. Like they're not part of a public disclosure organization. They're part of an
Stenography and talking points.
They're part of an organization funded by the military-industrial complex, the Koch brothers, big pharmaceutical industries, and banks.
And
That's-
big pharma, I
like,
mean,
that's
people
not
don't
public.
realize, man,
Yeah.
it's gotten out of control.
Yeah.
Right.
Like their ad level is beyond just about everything.
As
You
many
watch any
problems-
sort of news program and that has commercials,
Yeah,
and you're
and that's the
seeing
thing.
75%
The
big pharma
news
ads.
is what? I'd say a 70, 80, sometimes 90% fear porn, depending on what
Oh,
you're
yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
So you're already in a state, whether you realize it, if you're buying into the bullshit they're selling you, of panic, of fear, of paranoia. So why not play on your other paranoias and say, you better fucking get this pill to feel better.
We,
You know?
while we were, after the protest today, we saw on CNN, there was, of course, a big, elaborate tribute to Kobe Bryant. America is still in its, 30th day of mourning.
I don't think we'll ever get over it as a population. Like,
Yes,
Yeah.
and with all due respect to his
I'm still not over Harambe. To tell you.
well, yeah, that was.
well,
But the reason I
that.
find this emphasis on Kobe Bryant's death to be so lurid is because this is the NBA, an institution that, in collusion with local governments, impoverishes communities, mostly communities of color, to take away tax dollars that could be used to fund schools and other social services, and instead creates these adult playgrounds, as Rashida Tlaib describes them. In Detroit, for example, the children do not go to school on Fridays because there's no public money for that, apparently, but they have money to build a new stadium for the Pistons and the Red Wings.
Sure.
So Kobe Bryant, this apotheosis we have granted Kobe Bryant is inappropriate. I'm sorry to him and his family that he's gone, but this shows where our priorities are.
Listen, no one even mentions how about the families that died in there. You know,
Right.
no one even wants to talk.
Right.
Listen,
People.
when I heard it originally that it was him and his 4 daughters, the first thing I said to myself is, man. And the mother survived. I can't imagine. The kids were my first thing.
Exactly.
Then you find out about the families, and it's look. I'm not happy the guy's dead, you know, by any means. But when the media has been able to focus on him as if he's a hero on the level of somebody that's exposing torture, murder, corruption, the killing of millions unjustly, and those that are benefiting from it, I'm sorry. It's not a fucking,
Right.
you know?
It gives them a headline and a way to not talk about the situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Directing our emotions and mental energy towards something frivolous. And then one other thing, after the gluttonous coverage of Kobe Bryant's death, CNN then switched to discussions about how coronavirus is tragically weakening the stock market.
So I don't want
Listen, I listened to Bloomberg on
That
the way
was the
here.
first thing you said.
Yeah, I mean, Bloomberg, and by the way, all you stockheads out there, I'm telling you now, gold's going up. It already hit $1,700
Yes.
today,
Yeah.
and people are going to start. I'll tell you what, if this gets really bad within the next couple weeks, expect it to disrupt the crypto market. I don't know whether it's going to be positive or negative, or positive for some coins and negative for others, but when you have a volatile stock market, they're almost intertwined at this point. And because, I mean, your Bitcoin's all well and good, but it ain't going to save you from no fucking quarantine. You know? So, I mean, that's why people are looking at hard assets, because I'd give you a silver or gold coin.
there were
But a digital beanie, baby?
there
No.
there were houses
No.
there were houses of nobility in the Roman times that functioned on less than 30 pieces of silver. Because buying and exchanging, you don't need to hold the resources, you just need to hold the land to continue buying and exchanging. So, if you can, buy $1,000 in silver now and just fucking hope. Buy $200, walk into the pawn shop and grab something small that you can walk back in 2 weeks and sell for 10 times the value when that shit skyrockets.
And listen, it never hurts to have a plan. I'm not, Johnny Preps a lot, but, people were talking about here in D.C. because of the stock market going down, because of the hype around the coronavirus. Now in Iran and Bahrain, and they're talking about Italy. That some of the shelves are starting. Listen, I'm not trying to make anybody fearful, but some of the shelves are starting to empty. So I hope and pray that we as a populace, no matter how bad this virus is and whatever lethality is, we don't bow down on our knees and quarantine ourselves for the state. And I don't believe we will, because we still have, not on the level of China. There will be communities that do it, but I really feel, because we're an armed populace, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being naive, maybe we're too far gone, but we still have free speech, and we still, I don't want to be China. I don't want to be China.
This is the problem we have, is
Yeah.
that this coronavirus fear-mongering is intended to make people more and more comfortable with the idea of the
Right.
government stepping in and hauling people off for their own protection.
Yeah.
Likewise for the banning of people from Twitter and other social media platforms. Likewise for the prosecution of Julian Assange. It's that the government knows best, and that you cannot be trusted with your own intellectual volition. That is the message that's being sent here.
So I don't want to be that guy, but Kobe Bryant was one of the most beloved basketball players in China, and I'm just going to leave it there. But I would we're going to wrap up now because we have a couple other actions we're going to get to tonight, if that's cool with everybody.
Oh, and we got crying Jordan back because
We
of this.
did get
We got
crying
crying Jordan
Jordan.
back from this
I will say
month-long
one
Oh, yeah, the
adventure of
I'll say one thing before we go.
Yep.
It's just somebody in the chat earlier asked a question: how can which people can be brought together for a mass protest? That would be every single person in the chat, every
Yeah.
single person who's watching this, every single person who cares about this issue. Because one thing that I was talking to Christy about this earlier today, when I went out to those rallies to try to get the candidates on the record about Assange, it was difficult because I didn't have any friends who could go out with me. I had to be literally the one lone person who looked like a lunatic in a sea of several hundred. Today it was the reverse, where we had a very large group of pro-Assange people and only one guy who wanted to make inappropriate comments trying to put us down. But it did not work because we had those strengths in numbers. And that's really what's been the great reward of this work for me, is that my life has changed so much since I started trying to do something for Assange. It's brought me into contact with so many great people, a lot of people in the chat, a lot of other people that I've met strictly through this work that I don't want to mention right now because it would take too long. But yeah, it's been so incredibly rewarding. This in itself is a reward, and it shows that we still have some life in us, even if the state is trying to strangle it out of us.
And by the way, even if a large group wants to label you the black sheep, guess what? That doesn't make you wrong. That doesn't make you wrong. And
let me say this real quick. If you're part of the Burmist Brigade, you do not have to go through the catch-up process that most people have to do when they first come into activism, because you guys already know what's going on. You can walk in much more informed than most people would into this movement, and actually make some fucking noise for press freedom around here.
we're 40,000 strong. We're 40,000 strong. We fill up the fucking arena, a big one. That's what with those 40,000, you and Erica Jill did it today.
That's twice the size of any NBA arena.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. We have strength in numbers, and they suppress the hell out of us. I was talking to a normal YouTuber, because YouTube creators, they put out their things, and they're like, well, if your suggested videos aren't as much as your homepage videos, well, maybe there's a problem, right? My suggested videos are at 6.5%, okay? 50.1% are home screen. In other words, people that literally put me there, okay? When I told this guy that, he could not believe it because his numbers, even going down, are still at 22+%, right? And he has a 2 to 3 minute average watch time on his videos. He's got 500,000 subscribers. It's Pokemon stuff and like that. My average watch time is 9 minutes. You know how amazing that is for YouTube?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not trying to toot my own horn,
Yeah.
but my average watch time on videos that we don't usually do the long form. We usually do 10 to 15 minute videos. To have a 9 minute average watch time is unreal.
And it's because they don't want people seeing your content. Like, it's the crazy, like, these people, like the hyper-capitalist class, so to speak, wants to produce a product that people want to use until people want to use it for a purpose that they don't want them to use it for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've told this story before, and I'll say it again. Is that when I went to the Pete Buttigieg rally and I asked him about Assange, a crowd of about 300 or 400 applauded when I said that Assange was dying in prison. So I left immediately after that, and I could have, I didn't feel humiliated.
Who applauds death of anybody?
Well, here's what happened though. When I was on my way out, there was some kid who was probably not even 18 years old who was working for some media company. He stopped me as I was going to have to give me a fist bump. And I don't know who that kid was. I'll never find out who he was. But the fact that that one kid saw the example that somebody can go out and try to make a difference at least, that will stick with that kid. And that was well worth all.
It's a human connection without words.
Yes, exactly.
And as we were marching today, we had a lot of people filming us, a lot of people shaking their heads, yes,
A lot of
during our
people-
chants. A lot of people came up to us and said, thank you for doing this. So yeah, it's,
I saw one guy in a little two-scoot going, dun, 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 dun. It was just
There was a homeless
in the middle of the
man.
thing,
There was a
you saw
homeless
it?
man who asked for a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was literally not making it
Absolutely.
up.
And that's because people put into the shitty socioeconomic situations understand, even if they don't know the intricacies of the case, that the system itself is fucked. That it's designed to break itself when necessary to prevent other people from stepping in to break it. Because honestly, the US government has done more damage to its own self than Julian Assange ever would, simply by trying to prosecute him and destroying their own laws.
People being a little flirtatious.
If you're in the DC area, tomorrow we're in front of a couple mainstream media outlets. If The Hill, Washington Examiner, Washington Post, and CNN, maybe CBS and ABC. Wednesday, we are at the William Truesdale Detention Center in Alexandria, Virginia, where Chelsea Manning and Jeremy Hammond are incarcerated. Thursday, we are in front of the Capitol building. And Friday, we are back in front of the White House, on to Trump Hotel, and concluding again at the Department of Justice, where we will be screaming at the building for a little while. And I gotta say, man, that was, if nothing else, cathartic.
Yeah.
It was.
And if you cannot make it to DC to be with us, you do not have to do that to
No.
do anything. Go put posters up on your
Well, we love this.
on the literal light poles outside of your street. Like to Dak's story, I was the one crazy person in my city that I was the guy walking around at 2 a.m. stapling posters to telephone poles by myself. All my friends thought I was nuts, but it starts somewhere because it comes down to the quote about that Julian gave about injustice and how if we allow ourselves to be desensitized to it, then it just
We can't allow
It's
apathy to
fucking
police the
insane.
populace, man.
No.
We just can't. You got to break out of that. You can make a difference. You
Right.
have great
I do want to
power.
repeat that tomorrow morning, Steve and I will be on Fault Lines Radio at 8:30 Eastern. We're actually going to be in the studio, so if you follow Fault Lines on Twitter, you can go give them a follow, and you'll actually be able to see the video on their Twitter feed. So we're excited to get a different type of audience and get the word out about these actions. We are definitely, the three of us have been doing, well, the 4 or 5 of us have actually been doing different interviews and filming all day long.
Yeah.
And so we are just really here to get the awareness out
Yeah.
and to show people that, you know, we had a lot of people agree with us on the sidelines that come out, start doing these actions. It's safe to talk about this. It's safe to be that person in your community to stand up for Julian Assange and free press and free speech.
And if you are in a state that is going to have a primary or caucus coming up soon, and the presidential candidates are visiting your state, get them on the record. Bring your friends, as many as possible, to ask them where they stand on Julian Assange. Let them know that it's not just a few random people. It is a serious public interest issue.
And if you're a Trump supporter,
Yes.
why, or not why, but in this moment is the most important to apply pressure to President Trump, regardless of what you believe is happening behind the scenes. Because whether you're someone that trusts the plan or doesn't, the fact is nothing will change without people being the difference. And it's literally going to take people going to Donald Trump rallies and handing someone a free Julian Assange sign and them saying, thank you, this is something I care about that I don't hear about. And it doesn't have to be anything more than a printed piece of paper in Times New Roman that just says free Julian Assange. Print 400 of them, hand them out at Trump rallies, and either make the security take them away or let them get in and have that message be seen. And do it not just with Trump, but I point that because he's our fucking president running on a campaign trail and wants to get support of the populace. So if we can create this as an issue specifically in Trump's campaign and with the base that he sees in the megadomes that he's filling, that makes an impact and that makes a difference.
This is an issue, no matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, anarchist, whatever. Free speech and free press is an issue we all should care about, no matter where you stand. It impacts us all, whether you're a journalist, whether you're just an average citizen. If we don't have this kind of information, we cannot change our communities, we cannot better our lives, we cannot elect people who will enact these things that we want to see for our children and our grandchildren.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about who you vote for, because all of those people are just asking you to make concessions now for the hopes of something in the future if they're not standing up for Julian Assange in this moment. Because that's literal my line in the sand of support for a candidate is, okay, what's your stance on Assange? And it doesn't have to be educated. It doesn't have to be intellectual. It could just be, I don't know, but I think he needs to go free. Whether,
Oh, good.
I was just gonna say, whether it's repatriation to Australia, whether it's just walking out of the front doors of Belmarsh prison, whether it's going to Iceland or some other, hopefully not Five Eyes nation,
Right.
by any and all means necessary, we need to get that man out of that glass box.
Some of my best conversations on the campaign trail with Trump supporters. I met one man who said that he did not support Assange when the Democrats were in charge, but then when Trump took over, he realized, okay, just because Assange is revealing stuff that hurts Hillary Clinton, that doesn't mean I can be a fair weather fan of Assange. So he agreed with me that Trump should drop the charges. And I encouraged him to put pressure on Trump to drop the charges. If Trump were to get the DOJ to drop this case, he might see a lot of surge of support in November.
And you know, since we are going to wrap it up, and we didn't say this through the whole thing, Trump is the guy that said he loved the WikiLeaks. He couldn't get enough of the WikiLeaks. How about those WikiLeaks? You want to know who loves the WikiLeaks? Everybody here and everybody watching, because you value public disclosure of war crimes, and you value information that lets you make an informed decision on whether we should fucking be killing brown people or not in another nation thousands of miles away. But the media doesn't want that, and I refuse to play politics and just let that pass. So if you were a Trump supporter, and you're still a Trump supporter, and you love the WikiLeaks then, but you won't call them out on it now, for shame.
Yeah.
I think that'll probably wrap it up for this evening. We are now headed to a different little event, which
I think we are going to be live streaming as well.
We will.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna bring another phone.
But we shall see you folks shortly. Stay tuned throughout the week, and we will be back for plenty more. Thank you.
And Burmese Brigade, thumbs up, sub, share, hit the GoFundMe. Let's get it to 3K before I leave. I've got 10% battery on this one. I gotta go. I love you. I'll see you on the flip side. Right, Steve?
Take care, y'all. Everybody.
Cool.
Hey, I'm gonna get